So welcome back to part B of Spaniel Company, whereby we are reviewing a June 2013 paper under Spaniel Company. And so the next question, part B, is let's go to the question requirement first so that we can know exactly what we're going to pinpoint from the question so that I can answer it accordingly. Please be aware that sometimes, as what ACCA says, that most students answer questions that they would like to be asked and not questions that are being asked. So in the situation, it's very key for you to actually, because this is a case study that we're being given, and so we need to apply what we know of this question particularly, so that we apply the knowledge that we know from this question into applying it directly into the case study itself. So it's not about what you know, but how you will use that knowledge in answering this question, depending on the case study given. So let's jump right in to the question. Explain the matters that should be considered in determining whether Groom and Company is liable to Spaniel Company in respect of the fraud. So this basically might show that it might be a professional liability question. So it's not a time for you to start writing what you know about professional liability, but it's actually trying to ask a question according to what you're being asked. So here, let's go right into the question. You are a manager in Groom and Company, a firm of chartered certified accountants. You have just attended a monthly meeting of audit partners and managers at which client-related matters were discussed. Information in relation to 2 clients which were discussed at the meeting is given below. So this is Spaniel Company. So remember that you are a manager in the auditing firm, which is Groom Co, and the client here is Spaniel Company. So the auditor's report on the financial statements of Spaniel Company, a long-standing audit client. Okay. Trying to highlight here, trying to show that, yes. Wow. Okay. Now, long-standing audit client for the year ended 31st December 2002 was issued in April 2003 and was unmodified. So it was an unmodified report, meaning that there were no any qualifications. In May 2003, Spaniel Company's audit committee contacted the audit engagement partner to discuss a fraud that had been discovered. Okay. So here has been discovered. The company's internal auditors estimate that 4.5 million, wow, a lot of money, has been stolen in a payroll fraud which has been operating since May 2002. Okay. The audit engagement partner commented that neither tests of controls nor substantive audit procedures were conducted on the payroll in the audit of the latest financial statements. As in previous years' audits, there were no deficiencies found in controls over payroll. Okay, so let's highlight this. Yeah, so yeah. So we're given here the total assets recognized in Spaniel Company's financial statements at the 31st December 2002 is 80 million. Spaniel Company is considering suing Groom Co for the total amount of cash stolen in the company, claiming the audit firm was negligent in conducting the audit. So wow, we already have something to guide us here. So we're talking about matters that should be considered in determining whether Groom and Co is liable to Spaniel Company in respect to the fraud. So in this situation here, we have the exam verb that we've been told here is to explain. So here in explaining, it's more of like giving something in detail and the reason for it. So here you don't have to just cite that, oh, they have to sue because they have to sue. You have to have you don't just pinpoint areas where they should sue, but you should also pinpoint the reason why they should sue, right? Because you're told explain, give it in detail, and also explain your why. Why should they do according to what you've just identified being a matter that should be considered. So you should explain why. So I think here, basically what you have to realize is, first of all, aligning those responsibilities between the auditor and the client. Sometimes it's really the one thing that we need to tell the examiner is that we actually understand why we should give them like some sort of like standard that can guide us in terms of fraud, because we know there's a standard, an ISA standard, which is ISA 240, and that is auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. So in this situation, you have to clearly state first that it's not the auditor's primary responsibility to detect fraud. So you should be clear on that it's not an auditor's responsibility to detect fraud. However, it's primarily the responsibility of management to prevent and detect fraud. So the auditor is just required to obtain reasonable assurance on the financial statements that they're free from material misstatement, whether caused by fraud or error. That's whereby they have to like do the substantive tests or controls to detect any form of risk of material misstatement caused due to fraud or error. So it's not their primary duty to prevent. It's not their primary duty to prevent and detect fraud. It's actually management's primary responsibility to prevent and detect fraud. So you should be very clear on that, because most of students might just confuse and just say that the auditor must detect the fraud or something. They should provide reasonable assurance on the financial statements that they are free from material misstatement, whether caused by fraud or error. Okay. So in that situation where we're having right now, what we should do right now is to also go further into talking about key matters that need to be considered. So the first key matter for me, I'd actually just go right ahead to the numbers here. Like we know that it's 4.5 million that is the financial loss that has been suffered. So here, if you're calculating material misstatement, okay, we could say that it's representative of how many of the assets here, like the assets here themselves. So with 4.5 million, it means that it represents 5.6% of the total assets in Spaniel company. So here, bear in mind, we have been told, what have we been told? That, okay, this thing keeps on popping up, I understand, but the company's internal auditors estimate that 4.5 million has been stolen, which has been operating since May 2002. So we know that this is in between the year. So it means that since the year ended is 31st December 2003. So to be specific of the amount of the materiality level here, you should take 8 months, which means that from May to December, those are 8 months. So 8 over 12 times the amount here, 4.5, that will show that it's 3 million. So 3 million over that period of time has been lost over that period of time. So this 3 million has to over 80. If you take 3 million over 80 million, you will get something around 3.8% of total assets at the year end. And we basically know that materiality level for assets is it's usually from 1%. Materiality level usually if it's more than 1%, then it means that there is materiality there. So here it's 3.8%, so that means that it's material to the financial statements. So here in this situation, you can talk about the first one to consider is actually the materiality level of that amount that has been suffered, like by Spaniel company. So you can talk about also like I said, you can talk it more further by saying that it can be difficult for the auditor to detect the material misstatements, especially if it's being done by perpetrators, if it's being deliberately hidden by management, because management they can circumvent the controls, circumvent procedures, just to make sure the auditor does not understand like the trail of whatever that they're concealing. So in that situation, it can go undetected, even if the auditor does the best quality audit in their life. Sometimes these management have a way to work around things and just forge documents and just give them to the auditors. So you can also pinpoint and say, like, however, material statements arising due to fraud can be difficult for the auditor to detect, even though they have done all the procedures. So in the situation, we should also note down that you should also note down that, like I said, ISA 240, it requires that an audit is performed with an attitude of professional skepticism. And what we mean by professional skepticism is that having that questioning mind, like whenever you're doing something, you have to have like that question behind it. Like you should be that skeptical in everything that you're going to be auditing. So in this case, if we say, we have to now start like saying that ISA 240 requires the audit to be performed with an attitude of professional skepticism, with a questioning mind, critical mind. So in this situation, but it seems like they didn't, they weren't objective, and it shows that it might be due to the long-standing audit client, because it seems that if the long-standing audit client, they'll get used to them. So it's the same procedures, same thing, same time. So we just have to go with the flow like that. So that might be an indicator to show that they may have not uh, performed this audit with a high level of professional skepticism. So in the situation, we've been told that it's in this case, we've been told that they are a long-standing client, and that there were no tests that have been done, because you've seen here neither tests or controls of substantive audit procedures were conducted on payroll in the audit of the latest financial statements. So this shows that they didn't do the audit. So what we now we have to draw it back and say that uh, they didn't carry out those tests, and it means that they really were reliant on client because they knew that it was a long-standing client. So yeah, that was a fault on their part. And then you can talk about it's an auditor's responsibility to design and perform tests of controls to obtain sufficient, appropriate audit evidence as to the operating effectiveness of the relevant control. So you should talk about that being an auditor's like responsibility, that they should design and perform tests of controls to obtain that audit evidence that should be sufficient and appropriate for them in assessing the risk of material misstatement at certain levels. So in the situation, it can really mean that the auditor never performed any audit in the payroll, because they've said there clearly, they've said that they did not conduct any test of controls or substantive tests on payroll. So it means that the payroll wasn't has not been audited. So that's a red flag, a very big red flag. So this means that there might be a negligence that has been caused. And when we go to professional ability, we know that there have to be three things that has to have there have to be three things to prove negligence. And the first key thing is that there has to be a duty of care, and the duty of care has to be breached. And the final thing is the financial loss has been caused by negligence. So if you go down to this question, you can see that there was a duty of care, and that means that the auditor, whom is Groom and Company, and please be very specific that it's Groom and Company. So just talk about, so you can familiarize your answer to the case study itself. So you say that Groom and Company owes a duty of care to Spaniel Company because there's a contract, and they need to perform like the work that they had been engaged to do. So it means that they have a duty of service to Spaniel in terms of the audit. So since there's going to be then a contract and everything, and the company presents the shareholders, and therefore there has to be a duty of care that has to be owed to the company itself. And we can see that there's a breach of duty of care because we see that they didn't perform any of those audit techniques on the payroll. So it means that they did not fully commit to their services. So that means that there has been a breach of that duty of care. And also, it's important to state the financial loss that has been suffered so that you can prove that negligence has occurred. And in this situation, you can say that throughout the information that you've gotten just from this, you can say that you can confidently say that Spaniel is likely to be successful to prove that the audit firm has been negligent in the audit of payroll, and therefore Room and company will be liable for some or all of those or all of the financial loss suffered. So here we have to explain, you have to consider these matters as we have discussed, and also consider the example that has been used. So it's very important for you to actually put to put your things in detail, and not just put all the knowledge that you know about professional liability, but just put out that information in accordance to what you've been asked. So let us go take a quick break. Then we'll go to part C, which will be the final question for Spinal Company, and then we'll be back. Okay.